If you live with horses, you always have a carrot within reach. For us, it's a symbol of love and the go-to treat. But what actually happens inside your horse's body when that carrot turns into a daily habit? We're obviously not here to demonise the carrot because there's nothing wrong with it on its own, and it actually has a long history in the horse world. Cavalry units used it as a forage substitute when grass or water ran short, and it was also given to recovering horses to help them regain strength. That's exactly why the idea that carrots are good for horses has been building for decades. Like with a lot of things, the problem isn't giving your horse a carrot every once in a while as a treat. It's turning it into a fixed part of the daily diet. First thing you need to know is what a carrot is actually made of. Its makeup runs somewhere between 85 and 90% water, with about 3.5 grams of sugar and around 7 grams of total carbs, 2 of those being fibre. Looked at that way, it doesn't seem like much, but daily repetition on top of your horse's regular feed can change that picture fast. And that's where the first real effect shows up: the displacement of the main diet. If your horse starts expecting that carrot as part of its routine, it can start eating less of its balanced feed or hay, especially if the carrot gets handed out close to mealtime. This happens more than people think. Equine nutritionists report it constantly. A horse, like any animal, goes for whatever tastes best. So what happens next? A diet that trades forage for a sweet vegetable, even in small amounts, is a diet that starts tipping out of balance. But the imbalance on the plate isn't the only thing that shifts. The bond can take a hit too. If your horse gets a carrot every single day, especially straight from your hand, it starts associating your presence with food. If this has happened to you, you know it seems harmless at first, even kind of funny. But over time it turns into a horse that noses through your pockets, gets pushy, or downright disrespectful chasing the treat, and can even nip without meaning to, simply because it's desperate for that carrot. On this point, equine behaviour specialists agree. The problem isn't the carrot, it's the lack of structure in how it's handed out. Giving the treat in the same context every time, with no clear reason behind it, just feeds the anxiety. And if up to now we've been talking behaviour, now we step into chemistry. Because one large carrot packs around 230 milligrams of potassium. For a healthy horse, that's not a risk at all. But for a horse with hyperkalemic periodic paralysis, known as HYPP, a genetic condition that mostly shows up in certain quarter horse bloodlines, that extra potassium can trigger episodes of muscle weakness or trembling. So if your horse has been diagnosed with HYPP, the vet recommendation is simple: skip carrots as a regular treat altogether. Potassium is only a problem for a small group of horses with a specific genetic condition. Sugar, on the other hand, is something everyone needs to be careful about because it's where the most misinformation floats around. Carrots aren't actually high glycemic compared to spring grass or a grain-heavy feed. The real issue shows up in horses that already have an underlying metabolic condition: equine metabolic syndrome, insulin resistance, or Cushing's. In those cases, any extra sugar source, even a moderate one, piles onto a load the horse's body is already struggling to process. One equine nutrition study looked at horses eating large amounts of carrots, up to 11 pounds a day, in horses with no metabolic issues, and found no significant harm beyond softer manure from the water content and some weight gain from the extra calories. But that same amount in a horse with metabolic syndrome can turn into a real risk factor for laminitis. Everything we've covered so far happens on the inside. The next risk has nothing to do with metabolism. It's about the throat. Say hello to the dreaded choking risk, something a lot of owners underestimate at some point. If you hand over a whole carrot or thick chunks, your horse can bite off a big piece and swallow it almost without chewing, especially if it lives with other horses and there's competition over who gets there first. That piece can get stuck in the esophagus, causing what's known as choke, an esophageal blockage that, while it usually isn't as life-threatening as colic, still needs immediate vet attention and is completely avoidable. So your horse doesn't pick up any bad habits around carrots. Here's a piece of wisdom. Experience has taught me, always cut the carrot lengthwise, never into round coins, because a carrot disc is the exact diameter to get lodged in a horse's esophagus. This choking risk we just covered gets even higher in one specific group: older horses, especially ones that have already lost teeth. A horse missing teeth, or dealing with advanced dental wear, can have a hard time chewing a whole carrot properly, which raises that choking risk we just talked about. But it can also mean swallowing chunks that aren't fully broken down, which complicates digestion further. For these horses, the vet recommended move is to grate the carrot, or boil it, and let it cool before mixing it into the balanced feed. A solid way to take care of your old friend. There's one last habit that seems harmless and that almost none of us think of as dangerous: tossing the carrot on the ground for your horse to find. It's something we do without thinking, especially when handing out several pieces or when more than one horse is competing for the food. The problem is that along with the carrot, your horse also picks up dirt and sand off the ground. Since that sand doesn't get digested, it builds up in the large intestine over time, and the number is scary. Equine nutrition studies estimate that up to 30% of colic cases in sandy soil regions are tied to this kind of build-up. It's not about one single time, it's the day after day repetition that creates the problem. And like every problem, this one has a solution, and it's simpler than you'd think. If you're handing out carrot pieces, do it in a bucket, a tray, or straight from your hand. And now to dial the fear factor back down. Here comes the one effect on this list that isn't dangerous at all. Just a curiosity. And it has to do with coat colour. Carrots are loaded with beta-carotene, which the body partially converts into vitamin A. But not all of that beta-carotene gets converted. Some of it gets absorbed directly and stored in body tissue, including fat and skin. In horses that get very high amounts of carrots consistently, this can create a subtle orange tint in areas of light or unpigmented skin. It's not a health problem in itself, more of a physiological quirk, but it's a clear sign that you're going past the recommended amount. So after going through all the possible risks an innocent carrot can bring, the question is, what's a safe amount? And here vets tend to agree on a reasonable range, 1 to 2 large carrots a day for a healthy adult horse. For horses with metabolic syndrome, Cushing's or laminitis, the recommendation is to check with your vet before adding them at all. And if your vet gives the green light, keep the amounts minimal. For ponies and miniature horses, the recommendation gets even more conservative, since their digestive systems are proportionally more sensitive to sugar excess. Here's an interesting fact. The vitamin AA carrot provides is, in most cases, redundant. A horse with regular access to fresh pasture already covers its vitamin A needs without any extra supplement, because that vitamin gets stored in the body during grazing months and released gradually through the winter. Carrots can be useful as an extra source for horses that go long periods without pasture access, but they're not, as a lot of people believe, a nutritional requirement. So what really happens to your horse if you feed it carrots every day? If it's a healthy horse with no metabolic conditions and the amount stays moderate, the honest answer is nothing serious. The real risk isn't in the habit of giving carrots, it's in 3 specific things: the amount, how it's cut, and the context in which it's handed out. Cut wrong, it can choke him. Given as a treat with no clear rules, it can make him pushy or anxious. And given in excess to a horse with an underlying metabolic condition, it can become a real risk factor for laminitis. The carrot itself isn't the problem. It's what we as owners do with it, without thinking. Like with almost everything in horse care, the key isn't cutting out the joy of the treat. It's giving it with the same care we put into every other part of their diet. To wrap up, if you love your horse, pay attention to him, get to know him, and take care of him.